There are some amazing creatures in the world that are not visible to the ordinary human eye. Ayakashi, among them there are those that harm people. Therefore, there are shinobi who do not spare themselves to fight them. However, the plot begins in the spring. Color Sakura. One day a girl named Suzu Kane decided to go to the van with sweets. She wanted a pancake. Suzu doesn't know what to choose now. She is offered a discount and she takes two at once. Meanwhile, a spirit was watching her. But then someone catches him. The cat does not understand what is happening. It was an exorcist. His name is Matsuri Kazamaki. This Ayakashi got angry at him and ordered him to let him go. To which Matsuri replies that his job is to expel people like him and will not let him go. Suddenly Suzu hears some swearing and finishing the pancake runs there. She noticed how the guy was holding the cat by the scruff of the neck and grabbed it out of his hands. She began to condemn Matsuri for treating him like that and saying that the cat is cute. He also explains to her that he is an Ayakashi and that it is necessary to get rid of him. When she started to leave, the guy wanted to stop her and convince her that he was not joking. But then he pays attention to her thighs and talks about how big they are. For such stupid and impudent behavior, she knocks him in the face with her knee. Shirogane looks at this and thinks what kind of guy Matsuri is a dumb. She said she would take the cat to a safe place. She left on a bicycle, telling him that the guy still has his own business. Next, she notices that the cat is talking, and then tells her case from childhood. She has been friends with ghosts for a long time, but those around her have never believed her. Then she met Matsuri, who could also see them, so they became friends. Later, he started chasing them away from Suzu. Meanwhile, he is already fighting with one of them, at a place where accidents often occur. He easily hits him with wind blows, but the spirit turned out to be tenacious, so he finished him off with a strong elemental technique. Suzu continues what he said. She doesn't mind exorcising evil spirits, but only good Ayakashi hang around her, she says. Then she started talking about high school and suddenly she thought that at that age young guys and girls start dating. It confuses her. Shirogane is shocked. He thinks to himself, is she really thinking about what he thinks is debauchery? But suddenly he still waited for the moment to attack her. Matsuri then talks to his grandfather. The guy told about Suzu that she took a spirit named Shirogane with her. The old man suddenly shuddered and warned him that this spirit is very dangerous, even though it hides under an innocent guise. He said he needed to find him soon. Meanwhile, Suzu is squeezing this spirit. He says she is a real priestess of Ayakashi. Then he revealed his real appearance. Matsuri headed towards them. Shirogane tells the girl the truth about being a priestess. As a result, it turns out that she only found out now and the guy didn't tell her about it at all. Suddenly he came out to the place where they were and she shouts to the guy about why he didn't tell about it earlier. Matsuri, who was already ready to attack the evil spirit, replied that he could not just tell her that she was a victim for such as this spirit. There is a skirmish. As a result, he catches this spirit with a masterful technique of sealing spiritual power. But Shirogane manages to put a curse on the guy. The cat runs away and Matsuri turns into a girl. Both are at first in complete disbelief. Suzu approaches him and tries to find out what happened and where Matsuri guy went. Shirogane is walking down the street. He has lost all his strength. In the morning, Suzu went to get Matsuri and there they began to change the guy into a school uniform. Grandfather, meanwhile, sips tea and suddenly he wondered when the last time Matsuri's girlfriend came to them. When they came out, grandfather was shocked. They said they went to school. As they walked, Suzu asked how easily he took this transformation. He responded by saying that an exorcist should always be ready for something like this. Therefore, he has to endure. Then Suzu began to reproach him for not looking at himself like that. They get on the bus. The guy sat down at the very end. She notices this and thinks about how Matsuri has distanced himself from her. And so, they finally came to school. The guy is all about Matsuri. They think it's some new student. He looks indifferently somewhere in the other direction. Suzu notices this. Suddenly someone crept up to her thighs. This is one of Suzu's friends. Her name is Yeo. Her friends praise her for her legs. Ryu takes her photos. Suzu asks MX to stop. He ran out of the classroom. The girl followed Matsuri. The teacher tries to stop her, but she runs past. Matsuri and Shirogane met again. The cat wants to make a deal. He wants to get his powers back and in return he will give him back his old body. Matsuri doesn't believe him because he can attack him. He saw through the spirit. Suddenly Shirogane spoke to the sealed tower on Mount Jiboshi. Like, there was an Ayakashi who devoured a bunch of villagers that was there. The spirit was going to call him. Suddenly, it felt like nothing had worked, but it turned out that he was targeting Suzu. Matsuri resorts to it in time and defeats Tadare. Shirogane is amazed that his other Ayakashi do not take him seriously, and he was also surprised that the guy in the girl's body defeated him with one blow. Matsuri is exhausted. Suzu says that even so, he looks cool. He has no choice left. He meets her friends. They notice that he is supposedly a kid. On the way home, Matsuri promised Suzu that he would behave like a girl. Shirogane has already come up with a new plan. Later, at home, the grandfather tells the guy the story of Shirogane. Previously, temples were built in his honor, but then he began to rampage. Then it came to Suzu. Next, the guy tells her about her vital energy, saying that if Haku exceeds the level of the usual, then she is a priestess of Ayakashi. She was making up stupid things for herself. Later, Matsuri wanted to go to the toilet. He accidentally enters the men's room. The teacher also comes in here and scolds him for going where he doesn't need to. Suzu often chastises him for his behavior, which is not typical of girls. Suddenly she comes to him by herself. In the course of the conversation, Matsuri told her that he kept the scroll. Suddenly it turned out that it was just Shirogane turned into her. He stole the scroll. Matsuri ran after him. The spirit said that the fact that the exorcist came out naked is unacceptable. He also took his equipment with another technique. Then he caught Shirogane off guard. Suzu came to them. She tried to stop the guy so that he wouldn't expel him, because that way he wouldn't be able to get his old body back. He agreed anyway and decided to keep the spirit at home. At home, Suzu ate sweets and thought about everything. She made a verdict for herself that she also needed to protect Matsuri from rash actions. But what should she do, she thinks. Then she remembered Shirogane again. She came up with something. She began to cook all sorts of goodies. After all, if there is something more delicious for him than a priestess, then this will solve the problem. Late at night she cooked dango. In the morning at Matsuri's house, he sleeps holding a scroll on his chest. Shirogane decided to quietly take this scroll from him. He said with a grin that he could not be fooled just like that, because an exorcist is always vigilant, even when he sleeps. Later in the living room, Shirogane is outraged that he has met with that case again. They say, has his old enemy aged? Grandpa lives normally, because as he said, he can now watch idols and play games all day long. Then Matsuri comes in with a tray and gives it to the old man. The guy himself came out in an apron. The spirit says that he clearly has good sides. Matsuri called the cat to eat. Leftovers were waiting for him in the bowl. Shirogane was indignant. They quarreled again. Suddenly Suzu comes with a treat for the spirit. She said she found a recipe for kibai dango on the internet and called them Suzu dango. Then there is a flashback where Matsuri used to be afraid of Ayakashi. Then he met her. His first thought was how cool she was. Suddenly grandfather and Matsuri noticed something. The guy came across a feather and his grandfather said that someone's familiar was clearly watching them. He flew to his master and accidentally gave himself away. This exorcist defeated another evil spirit. He's going to finish off Matsuri. Further to school, friends discuss mugs. He replied that he already had something to do. One of the girls thought it was some kind of side job. She began to guess. The exorcist was watching them. He was angry at him because he knew who Matsuri was. They had both clashed before. That exorcist was from the Ninokuru family, speed ninja exorcists. He then knew about Matsuri and that he was from the famous Kamezaki family. Once they were clearing the area from evil spirits together. He saw how the guy was working in the business and was very impressed by it. He thought they would become good rivals, go on assignments together. While he was walking around the school, he was met by his familiar. His name is Panasuk. He notices that everyone is afraid of the gloomy bodice of his master. Soga, that's the guy's name, finds Shirogane and decides to attack him. This is noticed by Matsuri along with Suzu. Shirogane escapes in fear. Soga chased after him, followed by Matsuri. He tries to stop Ninokuru from expelling him. Soga said he was very disappointed. After all, he remembers how Kamezaki was persistent and well attuned to the hunt for Ayakashi. He ran straight ahead. Matsuri came up with something. Suzu began to hope that he would protect Shirogane. Soga caught him off guard. He was about to destroy it when suddenly Matsuri flew on horseback on a banner. He tried to convince him not to do it and told his personal motives. After all, the ardent disposition of this guy is only thanks to Suzu. Ninokuru, angry, decides to attack, but misses and accidentally lifts Matsuri's skirt. He burned with shame and ran away. It turns out he's afraid of girls. Shirogane and Kamezaki returned to Suzu and she began to squeeze and feed the cat. The day got a little better. In the morning, Matsuri and Suzu are standing at the bus stop. They discuss what happened to them once. Soga, according to him, decided to leave everything alone Shirogane. But it's only a matter of time. He added that if the cat does some dirty trick, then he will definitely die at the hands of Ninokuru. At school, Yeo talks about some kind of TV series. She says she really likes this series. It's about how some lady's boyfriend is turned into a Shih Tzu dog. The rest say that this, in their opinion, is a rather strange series and clearly its author wants to cash in on furry lovers. Suzu comes to him and asks him to be friendlier with her. The guy in the girl's body said he didn't know what to talk to girls about. He didn't really have any friends. After all, as a child, he only spent time with Kanade and Ayakashi and then began to train. Later they go back to their friends and Yeo is already squeezing the cat, which is very reminiscent of Shirogane. Both, who knows him, are in a stupor. They decided to talk to him alone about his presence. The cat explains this by saying that in the guise of an ordinary cat at school, he will be safe. Then he said that there was a girl in the school who was obsessed with Ayakashi. It turns out with Yeo, a spirit began to hang around next to her, who substitutes her and she stumbles every time. Matsuri uses a technique to track down the spirit. Suzu notices him right away. Suddenly, Yeo almost falls down the stairs because of this Ayakashi. Kazamaki catches her in time. He apologizes for treating her so coldly because he didn't really have any friends. He says he doesn't mind making friends with her. She agrees. In general, all four of them became good friends and even created their own chat. Ryu was asked not to throw off all sorts of strange photos. Meanwhile, the English teacher began to squeeze the cat, Masaru Sujimori. He loves cats very much. Later, at night, Matsuri performs a ritual to intimidate the spirit so that it goes into the forest and does not interfere with people's lives. The next day, Yeo again talks about this series and there the main character saved his beloved from the curse with a kiss. Matsuri said that kissing before the wedding is terrible. The girls are shocked. Suzu began to reflect. She is glad that he has found a common language with her friends, but it seems to her that he has strange views on relationships. Suddenly appeared Panasuke and declares that Soga wants to see him. They met in a guise in which ordinary people will not be able to see them. Ninokuru tells him that he has learned something about Suzu. She's half human, half Ayakashi. He says that if she harms people, then expect trouble. Out of anger, Matsuri took him by the scarf. He pressed his chest against it. Soga got nervous and said he warned him and ran away. Suddenly Suzu met Matsuri and began to wonder what Ninokuru had told him. He didn't tell her. Then they heard their teacher chasing Shurigan. Before going to bed, Suzu cooks dango. It turned out that this is the third time she has eaten the portion prepared for her. She wonders if a kiss with him can bring him back to his former state. Shurigan is eating sweets on the roof and thinks that such a life seems to him not bad. Suddenly, he smelled something. My grandfather noticed it too. Matsuri can't calm down, he's thinking about Suzu. Suddenly, she came to him. He was surprised. She kisses him. It sees Shurigan. The guy in the girl's body starts calling her to find out what just happened. She was at home at the time and was already asleep. It turned out that by some miracle she ended up at his house. Both are in a stupor. A little later, Matsuri together with her began to question her grandfather in order to understand what had just happened. He suggests that maybe it was Suzu Haku who decided to leave her body due to stress and do whatever she wanted. Suddenly something came to Suzu and she asked Matsuri what her Haku was doing in his room. He asked his grandfather to help with monitoring the girl and her condition. The guy in the girl's body rushed to look. He keeps in touch with his grandfather through a tuning fork transmitter. Grandfather asks about her condition. She says she feels like her Haku is walking barefoot. Then they began to orient themselves by scent, but Shurigan made a mistake while sniffing. He and Matsuri began to quarrel. Grandfather asks them to calm down. They began to wonder again how the girl's condition was. She says she feels the grass floor with her feet, the wind that blows in her face, and also the smell of cows. Her Haku turned out to be in a cherry pancake farm. Matsuri now knows where to go and together with Shurigan he runs to this farm. Suzu's arm starts to hurt sharply and strongly. Haku tries to lift the shutters. It does not feel pain, but such a load can harm Suzu, so they rush to stop it. They manage to get there and Shurigan turned into this pancake to attract Haku's attention. It was satisfied and then evaporated. This madness has finally stopped. Suzu thanked Matsuri for his help and asked again if something had happened in his room back then. He said no and was embarrassed. Only Shurigan looked at it with discontent. The next day, Soga will find out what happened. Then he met with Suzu and she asked to keep him company. Then she talks about it with Kamezaki, saying she wants to get to know Matsuri better. Both were confused. Later they went to her family cafe where her mom and dad work. They were delighted with such a guest as Ninokuru. Matsuri watched from the sidelines. Shurigan began to incite him, but he responded extremely stupidly by saying that if Suzu has a boyfriend, then protecting her is nothing more than his duty. The spirit thought that the guy was obviously stupid. As a result, they still go there. Matsuri does not behave very naturally, and when he tries to read the menu, his tongue slurs. Soga tells about his clan, its history, and then about Panasuke found himself in the arms of Suzu. The familiar tells about what a good person his master is and how they met. Suzu says he is clearly a good guy and understands him. Later, the guys disperse. Matsuri and Suzu are flirting and Shurigan doesn't understand their dialogue. Ninokuru's thoughts after this meeting were that Priestess Ayakashi is now a goddess for him. On another school day, Ryu approaches Matsuri and decides to talk about the game he constantly plays on his phone. This game is based on manga which, as it turned out, they both really like. They began to discuss it in full. Suzu is watching them. Then they have physical education according to the schedule. While the friends were talking to each other, Matsuri decided to run forward. but they catch him and talk about the unity of their Kachifugetsu team. Suzu is worried about him. They should have a run today. Matsuri is asked not to run far from the rest. Suzu was surprised at how calm he was because he would change clothes with them. Next, she had already begun to think out the scene in her head. They say they caught a photo that had ghosts on it. They're in shock. The weather vane begins to spin. The ghost appeared next to Ryo. Apparently it's because of the photo she took. If he is not stopped, he will feed on her vital energy. At first, Matsuri suggested that she go to her to see his manga collection. As a result, they decided to arrange an overnight stay at Ryo. But there is one thing. They will have to take a bath together. Kamizaki is confused. A little later they are picked up by a limousine. It turns out Ryo is very rich. They are having fun while Shirogane riding this car accidentally catches bird droppings. At her house, they go into a hot spring. They began to undress. Matsuri wanted to leave, but in the end he was taken there by himself. They began to wash. He doesn't look at them. Matsuri said that she urgently needed to sleep. Suddenly Ryo finds herself in her library. The ghost caught her by surprise. It happens in her dream. She is in critical condition. Yeo went to look for medicines. The guy in the girl's body turned into his equipment and used his turntable. There he appears in his guise as a guy and fights with the spirit. Outside, he uses his banishment skill. He rescued the ghost from her and defeated this spirit. In her true form, Matsuri leaves her dream. In the morning she wakes up and tells her friends her dream. She called the one who was in that dream brave. The ghost in Ryu's photo has disappeared, but even so, she still has photos of Matsuri where he was having all the fun in the limo. They're going to school. He was outraged by what had happened, but he's still glad that his girlfriend is okay. Meanwhile, the Ayakashi Kappa tells about the Ayakashi priestess to some wandering artist. Another school day, Ninokiru called Matsuri to talk about something. He said it was something very important. It concerns Suzu Kaned. It turns out Senpai has fallen in love with her. Matsuri is very surprised by this. Soga added that he turned to him because he had known her for a long time and therefore wanted to know if he would interfere with Kazamaki. The guy in the girl's body says that he just protects her and it will be her choice. An artist came to school. The guys are on the trail of Ayakashi energy. Suddenly they see a teacher, a director, and an artist walking down the corridor. The principal asks the students to approach at the request of Garaku Utagawa. That's the name of this guest. Matsuri and Suzu notice that he looks human but radiates Ayakashi energy. He has a powerful energy. Then they conduct a tour of the school. They show him a class. Utagawa loves the school atmosphere. It turned out to be unexpected news for Ryo that Utagawa himself came to them. He himself is a famous artist in the world and her father is his fan. He takes out a brush and asks him to give the scroll. The floor was painted. The drawing comes to life and becomes an octopus. He catches Matsuri and paws him in search of the scroll. Then one tentacle was severed thanks to Ninokiru. Ninokiru cuts him down. It turned out to be a clone. The artist took the exorcist in chains. It was a special reception. Then Utagawa hears someone talking. Outsiders are coming here. He uses the technique that created the wall for the corridor where they were. Matsuri launches an attack, but he is surrounded by painted frogs and rabbits. He hits the crane with a shuriken. One frog takes the scroll from him, but Suzu snatches it and walks away. An octopus catches her and starts pawing. But suddenly there is a flash. The octopus turns out to be under her control, Utagawa says. The artist is amazed by what he saw. Matsuri then uses the vortex to hit the faucet. Water spilled down the corridor. The drawings dissolve. Utagawa was caught off guard. He begs for mercy and says that he doesn't really need the scroll. Then Suzu asked about what the artist knows about priestesses. He replies that she has the makings of the goddess Ayakashi. In the evening, Matsuri and grandfather discuss Garaku. The next day, the guy went to Suzu's house. Her younger brother Rita opens the door for him. He didn't recognize Matsuri, but he notices for himself that he has big breasts. He didn't realize that Matsuri was a guy before. Kazamaki and Suzu enter her room. Shirogane came in with them. He hasn't been to her for a long time. They began to discuss the latest developments. By the way, the artist loves cats, so he takes Shirogane and leaves the guys alone. They remembered Utagawa's words. The priestess has two energies, Kan and Haku. If she improves her skills, she will be able to heal wounds and remove curses. Matsuri says that he does not believe that Suzu has a developed Kan, because this requires exhausting training. Suddenly, the plush cat that Suzu was holding in her hands began to fly around the room. While they were catching him, they fell on the bed. Suzu remembered what she had said. She decides to remove the curse from him, but it didn't work out. Rita comes into them, sees them in an awkward position and leaves. The artist said it was fun with him. Matsuri starts dressing back into her clothes. He feels awkward after what happened. Suzu was thinking about something. At that time, Utagawa, along with Shirogane, sits and says that the priestess is amazing. Some dangerous Ayakashi has appeared. An uninvited guest has appeared, he says. Meanwhile, a huge monster is chasing after the little Ayakashi. It turns out to be Icon again. Both are watching him. Matsuri doesn't understand why this spirit attacks its own kind. This is how he finds his form, he says Shirogane. Suddenly, events are abruptly transferred to his meeting with Ninokuru. He asks to fix a friend to fix a strap for putting on a ninja. He agrees and asks him to be more careful in the future so that he does not shine his fundoshi once again. Matsuri then suggests that Soga go visit Suzu. He said he couldn't. The reason for this is his loss in the battle with Yuragawa. He believes that if he cannot defeat someone very strong, then he has no right to defend Kanade. They went into a toy store. According to Matsuri, it turns out that they hide weapons for exorcists here. Ordinary people don't see it. Shirogane heard something, and the hut was sharply attacked by an evil spirit. Suddenly a girl began to hunt the spirit. She caught him and pulled him into one of those useful things. This girl is from the Kurogi family since ancient times equipping exorcists. Her name is Ryo. Ryo began to ask Matsuri about Suzu, who she is and why she is here. She immediately realized Suzu that she is a priestess and Shirogane is the king of Ayakashi. Later, he is allowed to practice with a dummy. Kurogi says that this way he will restore his vestments. She has already designed an upgraded suit for him. When she started talking about his past and present sizes, Suzu was inventing vulgarity for herself. Then Ryo started talking about how they met. Matsuri really liked the equipment she made once. In general, she helps him with equipment and she really likes it. She feels that it is her duty. Then they just watch the efforts of Matsuri. They are delighted with the way he moves. After he finished, this robot grabbed him and began to tickle him. It turns out that he was attacked by Shirogane. Because of the tickling, Matsuri cannot attack. There is nothing left but to destroy the robot. It happens. The guy strikes the last blow and breaks it. The costume came out vulgar. Matsuri is shocked. At home, he thought about what Ryo had said. His reincarnation strap had clearly broken due to some strong energy. He then comes to the conclusion that if the strength of Suzu can surpass the strength of Shirogane, then she really is a goddess. According to Shirogane, someone has clearly turned up in their city. It was Ryo. She found the place where the UFO was filmed. She raised her hands and said it was time to start the ritual for the summoning. At school, Matsuri and Suzu repaired Kurogi vestments for the guy. She brought him his package with the help of a drone. He even got better. Suddenly, Matsuri called Ryu and Yeo. It turns out some guys wanted to exchange phone numbers with him. Soga notices that the spirit has a changeable form. Such a spirit can become an evil Ayakashi. Ryu examines a previously seen photo. Shirogane finds Ayakashi, who looks like a UFO. Matsuri decides to try out new equipment and a net for catching Ayakashi. Then he tries to catch him. Shirogane says the spirit can be seen for people to intimidate. The cat wanted dangos. Suzu refused to give them to him because he had already eaten them. Then he came up with the idea of turning into a Matsuri guy and really embarrassed her with it. He says his name is Shiramatsu and he is 400 years old. She says she will keep his secret. Then he goes on eating dango and suddenly he started behaving unnaturally. This is seen by Matsuri and Suzu. They're in shock. They noticed his behavior and Suzu says it's because of the catnip she planted. Suddenly, the spirit imagined Ryu that she was a huge mound of big dangos. He said he wanted her that he wanted her. Ryu was surprised and confused. Then he suddenly puts back on the cat and she does not see it, but sees the silhouette of a spirit that looks like a UFO. She thought it was Shiramatsu who flew away. She fell in love with a non-existent alien and tells it to Yeo. She thinks she's not all at home. Matsuri scolds Shirogane for such a trick. Suzu missed the old look of Matsuri. The guy comes home and Kurogi meets him. He treats her to tea. Grandfather is at a neighborhood meeting. Suddenly Ryo says that the guy is clearly good in the girl's body. He says he thought so too, but even so, it's a big problem for him. Ryo, with the help of a robot assistant, does not completely undress Matsuri and starts sniffing him. She has a fetish for the smell of curses. Then come Suzu and Shirogane. They listened first, and then they saw what was happening. They were in shock. The spirit said she was an oddball. She does not deny this, but says that this is a kind of preparation for an exorcism. She explains for making the dust of purification from curses. Matsuri feels it and suddenly his chest has become smaller. It worked partially. The guy thanks Ryo. As a result, his chest became even bigger. The counteraction effect worked. Grandfather comes home at night and sees it. By morning, she was the same. Shirogane is very wary about the approaching threat. On the way to school, Shirogane reproaches Suzu for looking at Matsuri's breasts. She is surprised that his chest has returned to normal, but he said he had a hard time with it at night and his shoulders hurt. Suzu recalls Yutagawa's words about her ability to possibly remove curses. She wants to be useful to Matsuri. Someone was watching them. At school, rumors began to be heard about some newcomer. Girls are very interested in this. This guy approaches a couple of some girls and asks where exactly Suzu Kanade is here. Suddenly, the same guy who was watching them approaches Suzu and asks her to talk to him. The girlfriends were surprised by the cute guy and began to push their friend to talk to him. They tell him how Suzu was taken away from here to talk. The guy got worried and they tried to stop him when he wanted to go to her. Then that stranger shows her the wounded spirit. Suzu wonders where he sees the spirits from. His name is Sasuke. He says that he has seen them since birth and asks her to help heal that spirit. He said he didn't know how to do it. She uses energy and heals him. She learned how to control Haku. He praises her, mentioning that she is a priestess. Suzu was puzzled as to how he knew about this. He eats the spirit before her eyes. He liked the taste of the priestess Ayakashi's energy and decides to take her away. Shirogane wanted to stop him, but did not have time. They disappeared. Matsuri and Soga were late. Shirogane tells what happened and who he saw. Suzu was kidnapped. The greatest spirit did it. Gino. The guys are in a hurry to find her. Before that, Shirogane told about the encounter with that dangerous spirit. He ate his relatives and condemned him for it. Meanwhile, Suzu wakes up and sees Sasuke. He talks about himself. He was tired of the positive energy at school. He himself loves deserted places because he appeared from negative emotions. She asks why he ate that spirit. He said the reason he said earlier. He himself grew up devouring little spirits at first. He also really likes when these spirits feel despair when he eats them, so, according to him, their taste becomes richer. That's how he became Gino. She calls him a maniac and says Matsuri will save him. But his minions are waiting for them, rather disgusting monsters. She runs away from him. Gino is chasing her. Kazamaki protects her in time and hits the shell of this spirit in the face. He says the villain will pay for it. Suddenly it turned out that Gino enjoyed the vital energy of the guy's hand. Shirogane rushes to their aid. The guy tried to fold the seal, but it didn't work out because of his hand. Ninokuru gets hard in battle because of the space, but he gathers strength for powerful blows and copes well. Next, Matsuri uses the vortex rush technique, but suddenly he feels something like a big bite on his body as if his flesh has been devoured. It's happening all over his body. He falls to the ground. Gino says he is now dead. All the moments with Matsuri flashed before Suzu's eyes. She fell into despair and began to sob with horror. He began to approach her. He feels her emotions. Suddenly the unexpected happens. Shirogane stole the scroll and regained his powers. So, Shirogane saved Suzu. He asks her to hold on tight. According to her, everything that bound them together disappeared. It is absolutely impossible to notice or even smell it, so Shirogane can only guess just not to fall into his trap. He uses his games. Gino dodges. He taunts him, saying that his loot was some kind of way to replenish as many Haku as possible to counter him. And so it was. Suzu understands this. The king attacks with purple flames. With the help of this mouth, the enemy absorbs energy. In fact, he feeds on his techniques that have this very Haku. He makes a diversionary maneuver and catches the mouth by surprise. Shirogane throws the girl on a sofa that came from somewhere. Then he remembers everything that happened to people. He was feared and avoided, believed in him, and then safely forgotten. And after spending time with these guys, he finally realized that dealing with people is not so bad for him. He is critically injured in the eye. Gino is going to eat it. Suddenly a paper shuriken flew at him. Suzu did it by her own power. The villain is a little impressed. His arm was numb. She has surrounded him and is running towards Shirogane. She's going to cure him. Then the villain grabbed her and was about to eat her. She shouts out Matsuri's name and suddenly started a revenge whirlwind. The flying jaw was gone. The evil spirit was amazed that the guy survived. And surprisingly, Matsuri Kazamaki not only survived, but also returned his appearance of a guy back. He hugged Suzu to him. She began to sob and did not understand how the guy returned to his appearance. Shirogane explains to them what just happened. Soul distortion is essentially a working curse. It was removed from him due to the fact that he was simply eaten by Gino. The villain decides to eat part of the king's forces. He returned to the form of a small cat. Matsuri starts the attack. The king asks the guy to run away from the battlefield with the girl. Then he said, "The exorcist must learn from every failure. He's been through enough. It remains only to expel the monster." He asks to test Suzu in his strength. She and Shirogane are going to escape from here. The cat said that the guy was clearly crazy. Gino watches all this and says that killing Matsuri will make Haku Suzu even tastier. Suddenly the guy says that this spirit is clearly not capable of eating anything other than Haku. He offers the spirit to feed him with the wind, saying that his logic is idiotic. He cries, saying that with his mouth he is invincible. The guy jumped up and then falls into the mouth using his strongest technique. The enemy realized what his opponent had done. He's losing his shape, his wound is deep, and even so, He doesn't want to give up. Suzu starts crying in front of him, thereby spoiling his appetite. He disappears. The girl approaches Matsuri and hugs him. She says she felt sorry for Gino. She is glad that now everything has become good for both of them. Ninokuru came to them just when it was over. He didn't bother them. Then Matsuri asked to keep him company. Suzu thought about something obscene, but it turns out the guy decided to climb under the waterfall. Reflecting on what had happened, he realized that he had special feelings for her. He wants to protect her because he loves her. Suzu promises to return his body to him. But suddenly by chance she pulls off his fundoshi. She became a girl again. Shirogane began to scold her for this. Already at night, Matsuri and Suzu go home together. The guy in the girl's body began to wonder if her family was worried that she decided to go home so late. Shirogane asks her to talk to him. The spirit no longer has its powers. At school, their friends were worried about their absence. They excused themselves by going on a spree. By the way, the teacher was angry about this. Later, Matsuri figuratively tries to convince Suzu not to become a queen. She understood what he wanted to say. He says he's worried. She said that she thought for a long time and decided to try it anyway. The guy still did not convince her. Shirogane asks to go through it with him. Meanwhile, Ryo has already joined their school in order to help Matsuri. She sees the cat and Suzu along the way. They decided to help little Ayakashi find his beans. If this is not done, it will disappear. Matsuri meets Ninokuru again. He is shocked that the guy has become a girl again. He explains to him that it was temporary and he has an important conversation with him. He tells him that Suzu should soon become the queen of Ayakashi and this is her final decision. Soga says it's hard for him to imagine someone like that in the role of a person. But since they don't know her strength, they will be watching her. Suddenly Matsuri started talking about his feelings for Suzu. He feels awkward in front of Ninokuru, knowing his attitude towards her. Ninokuru got something in his head and he was embarrassed at the sight of Matsuri. But he pushes him to talk about the fact that he must improve despite the body. He says that Soga is still cool for him. Suzu and Shirogane found one bean for the little spirit. But this is not enough. It turns out Panasuke stole all the beans and accidentally dropped them, which caused problems for the guys. Suzu finds them and sees them in an awkward position. The girl is embarrassed and falls with Ryo in the same shameful position. At night, Suzu tries to wash the cat. Her brother does not see the cat, because ordinary people do not see spirits. The next day she became a queen. Everyone came to congratulate her, even Yutagawa. Suddenly, an Ayakashi named Tanomero said that he was protesting because a person cannot be the king of Ayakashi. The spirits began to discuss this topic very acutely. They say that it was calmer with Shirogane. Matsuri tries to convince him that everything is not so bad. The spirit uses its technique on it. The guy sees an illusion where he takes a bath with Suzu. The girl herself cannot influence this in order to stop it. Tanomero is very angry at them for not being able to be friends normally before. Then Matsuri remembers that he used to chase away the little Ayakashi. He was wrong. Suzu said that the guy has become stronger and that if the spirit is stubborn, the guy will not be able to make peace with him. The spirit realized that he was also wrong, and then it turned out that he did not know how to stop the technique. Suzu, without hesitation, creates a shadow clone and touches Matsuri. He had freed himself from the trap. Everyone is amazed. Then the guys began to put up. Suzu is interested in what tormented the guy in the vision. The cat clearly realized that it was something outrageous. Yutagawa says the new queen is showing great promise. Everyone praises the new queen Ayakashi. Matsuri and Suzu are still keeping their promises.